Hello and welcome to the Doofcast, the official variety podcast of doofmedia.com. My name is Scott Daly 3, and this is my co-host, Matt Freeman 2.
Wait, you're Scott Daly 3? Did you time travel once without telling me?
Did you make a whole secret failsafe box without telling me?
Okay, good point.
This week on the show, Matt, we're starting a new segment, a new thing. We're doing something new on the show, and I'm excited about it. We're doing a segment we're calling, tentatively, the Council of Doof. If anyone here remembers a long time ago, Matt and I had a recurring segment when we were still Daily Planet Films called Kryptonian Collection. Get it? Because it's a Daily Planet. It's Superman. I like Superman.
Oh.
Yeah. The idea of that show was to have people on the show presenting some of what they thought was the best media and kind of to collectively vote on the Daily Planet canon of the best films ever. I always liked that idea. I thought it was a lot of fun, but it's just really hard to regularly have guests on a show, especially with the number of shows we produce and the extremely tight time limit we're in to get them produced and out every week. It's just too hard to have guests consistently, so we had to kind of stop doing it. And I always wanted to bring it back, and finally we found a way to bring it back, Matt. We're bringing it back with what we're calling the Council of Doof, or Doof Council, or whatever the heck this is. This is what we're doing. It's kind of like Kryptonian Collection 2.0.
Yeah, I'm excited about this because I did always enjoy that. I like the whole concept of it, and I'm excited to see how we're going to redo it.
Yeah.
So the idea behind this one is that once a month, those individuals that donate to us on Patreon at the Doof Warrior level or above, our Council of Doof, will get to collectively decide on a short story or movie for the community to consider for entrance into the canon. Scott and I, and then maybe some guests, will meet and talk about the movie and then present our case for why it should or should not be admitted.
But unlike the Kryptonian Collection, Matt, we're leaving the final decision up to you guys, our listeners. So in the show notes of this episode, you will find a link to a poll, and you will go on that poll and click yes, it should be in the canon. No, it should not be in the canon. And you guys will decide. Basically, Matt and I are going to argue. Maybe sometimes we'll disagree, sometimes we'll agree, and we'll kind of give our arguments, and then you will listen to those arguments and then decide for yourself. It's democracy. Kind of.
Yeah, and maybe we'll bring in something of the spirit of the old show. We'll have like maybe a guest who really loves the movie come in to be its advocate, especially maybe if we hate it or something.
Yeah. But we definitely don't want to commit to that as like a standard format of the schedule, because it gets back to the same problem we had last time. But yeah, if we have that opportunity, we will absolutely take it. Sure. So stick around. Listen to our arguments, listen to the arguments we present, and then find that link in the show notes, cast your vote, and when we meet up again next week, we will discuss the results of the first Council of Doof and see if this movie get in. Speaking of the movie, Matt, what has the Council brought for us for our inaugural episode of this thingy we're doing?
The Council has nominated the 2004 science fiction film Primer.
All right, so we're going to do a full spoiler discussion on Primer in this episode, and that's it. That's all we're doing this week, Matt. I think that's plenty. It's plenty to do. We'll talk about Primer, and then maybe we'll finish up talking about why we talk about the movie generally, and then give our votes and say why, and then leave it up to you folks. So let's do it, Matt. Let's talk about Primer.
Let's do it.
Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to read this. You're going to listen, and you're going to stay on the line, and you're not going to interrupt, you're not going to speak for any reason. Some of this you know. I'm going to start at the top of the page.
Inside the box, it's like a street. Both ends are cul-de-sac.
They took from their surroundings what was needed and made of it something more.
All right, Matt, what does IMDb say about Primer?
4 friends / fledgling entrepreneurs, knowing that there's something bigger and more innovative than the different error-checking devices they've built, wrestle over their new invention.
That is...
Wow. That is the most boring summary.
I know. Like, why would anyone want to see that movie ever?
Oh, my God. That's the worst. We've been doing this a while, Scott. This might be the worst summary I've ever seen.
Who do you think writes these?
The two of the four friends are completely irrelevant to the plot. So
I don't even know their names.
And then most of this summary is about, oh my God, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. Okay, anyway, let's not dwell on that.
This is a movie about time travel. That's what the movie's about.
Yes.
It's about time travel.
It's a movie about time travel and about two friends who come to distrust each other and become increasingly paranoid and so forth.
Yeah. So this movie came out in 2004. It was written, directed, produced by, shot by, edited by, composed by, and stars Shane Carruth. Shane Carruth is a filmmaker. Matt, this will shock you to learn. He has a degree in mathematics and engineering. And then he decided he wanted to make a movie. And this is the movie he made. So does that surprise you at all?
No.
That he's an engineer?
No. I mean, that's probably, I think this is one of the things that people said was great about it. And what's funny is I think I watched this movie in college and I liked it. And then watching it again this time, I liked it even more because I got more out of it. Like I was like, oh, like I even get the science stuff that they're doing, which I didn't get back when I was younger. And I get the, I appreciated the like garage entrepreneurship angle more, I guess just like being older, and be like, I don't know, being more aware of the world. I was like, oh, like I get it. Like I can empathize with these characters a lot more than I could when I was, younger. So, yeah, interesting that I liked it so much more this time, actually.
Yeah, that is really interesting. Yeah. I mean, they work 50 hours at their engineering jobs and then they come to this garage and do this stuff. I mean, it's like we're not doing engineering stuff, but we're doing a side job that we spend probably about 30 hours a week on, if not more. Uh-huh. So I definitely got that. I don't remember when I first saw this movie. I don't think I was in college. I think I was a little older than that. This must be one of those ones you watched without me.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. But I, of course, am not an engineer. I have taken 0 engineering courses. I know very little about engineering. And most of the stuff they were talking about went right over my head. But the thing about it is that it felt real to me. And hearing you say, yeah, a lot of the stuff is scientifically accurate. I mean, obviously, time travel is not, but the jargon they were using and what they were saying as they were talking about different things was accurate and real.
I mean, I can very succinctly say, like, what I think the idea is that they were trying to make some kind of levitation machine based on something that they'd found published, like in real academic journals, but they kept saying stuff like, yeah, but they're just showing off. You can do without this and this and this. And as they simplified the machine, they stumbled across something that, first of all, I think what they were originally making was just a magnetic levitation machine, and then they ended up making an actual anti-gravity machine, which is impossible. And that was already going to be a fantastic product that they could make millions of dollars off of. And then they realized not only was it an anti-gravity machine, it was a time travel machine.
Yeah, because it's parabolic, Matt. See, it's parabolic. That's important.
It's important.
I don't know why.
Are important.
It's important. I think, this movie is infamous, or not infamous because people love it, but it is well known. It is a movie that took Sundance Film Festival by storm. I think it won the grand jury prize at Sundance. As we said, this was done almost entirely by Shane Carruth himself. It cost $7,000 to make. $7,000, Matt. So just think about that. We have enough money right now to make a movie like Primer if we wanted to.
True.
And I want to talk, as we go through it, I want to talk about the ways I noticed in which he cut corners and saved money in really, really fascinating ways, like the stuff Carruth came up with to do that. It took 2 years in post-production because, like we said, he edited himself. He wrote all the music himself. Everything in this movie is basically him. It is we make shows about the auteur theory, but so often those movies are a huge, huge team. And I don't want to take anything away. Obviously, Carruth had a crew that he worked with on this movie, but this is as close to auteur as you can get. He was everything. He was everything here.
Yeah, right. There is nothing without him. So
yeah. But the movie is famously known for being one of the most confusing, complex time travel movies ever. In the movie Looper, where Bruce Willis says, "I don't want to talk about time travel shit," Shane Carruth does, and he that's what this movie is about. I mean, this movie is about just taking this concept and then seeing what it could be done with it. But I think, pushing all that aside, what I think the movie is actually about is these two friends and their personality differences and their struggles, and how introducing the concept of time travel into those makes a whole big mess.
Right. I mean, I think you could also say it's about paranoia. It's about being unhappy with your life and making it 1,000 times worse in your efforts to try to get to a better place. The time travel, I mean, like any really good science fiction movie, the time travel is sort of the conceit that permits you to play with these human elements. And that, I mean, I think that's maybe what I loved about it this time is I think when I was younger, I enjoyed it. I was like, oh, wow, it's so cool. It's so inspiring that they made it so cheaply. But I don't think it connected to me as well as it connects to me now. I mean, it's basically about like people our age with problems of people our age who find a time machine. So that's it's kind of easier to connect to.
And they do the first thing, of course, you would do with it, which is they play the stock market successfully. And then what I love about it actually is the process of time travel in this movie is actually very complex. But the movie starts off really simply with it, right? Like it makes it as clear as possible and then kind of slowly ramps up the confusion. Like they do 2 instances of going back in time before things really start to ramp up and get weird. And then you realize it always was more confusing. You just weren't aware of what was going on. And then like, as the full scope of everything is revealed to you, that's when you're kind of like, wait, what?
Yeah. There was something, I mean, I think we can stand to talk about this because I think people who are listening to this episode will want to understand or to think about this or whatever. There was something that I really just came to understand just kind of chatting with you after watching the episode, the show. Mm-hmm. And it was, so, okay, I'm just going to walk through it. So the first couple of times they go back in time, they are very careful not to interfere with them, with the original timeline self, because they want to make sure that timeline self lives their day as close to exactly the same as possible and gets in the time machine and goes back.
Yeah.
And what you don't necessarily realize, because they don't actually come out and say it in clear terms, is that this isn't Back to the Future, where if they messed up their past self and caused their past self to not get in the time machine, they wouldn't cease to exist. There would just now be 2 of them.
Yeah. Which
is what actually happens. And that's actually like sort of more existentially horrifying than them just ceasing to exist. Because like, I mean, I thought the idea of like the guy who has a wife and kid and now he's duplicated and he either has to get rid of the original or
he just leaves.
Or leave.
I mean, the end of the movie is just him just leaving.
Right, which is super depressing, but like it did kind of seem like he wasn't enjoying his family life very much.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny how his wife and kid are so
peripheral.
Like they're barely in this movie. They're barely a consideration for any of the stuff going on. Like he doesn't seem that happy. It's really weird. So our 2 characters are Abe and Aaron is the one played by Shane Carruth. He's not the one that discovered or figured out the time travel. That's Abe, and Abe brings Aaron in. And Aaron is the one that is married with a kid. Abe is the one that's dating the girl who we come to understand is literally just dating her because her father, Mr. Granger, has a lot of money and they're using him for financial support. So neither of them are like really invested in their relationships at all. They seem just so much more concerned about the science and the engineering of the stuff than their lives at all.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think he's basically dreaming of escape. Like it's interesting because it's the movie doesn't give him a monologue where he talks about how he wants to escape, but it does every other possible thing it can to show you that he's dreaming of escape. Like he's fantasizing about how much money he's going to make. Mm-hmm. You know, when they ask what would you do with $1 billion with absolute freedom, I mean, that's a great moment because his wife is like, I try to do something meaningful and something good. And he's, first of all, he's like contemptuous of her answer. And then he's like, I would go punch this guy that I hate in the face. And you're like, wow.
And then I would go back in time and tell myself not to do it.
Right.
So I didn't have to suffer the consequences of it, which is what they end up planning to do.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious. Like, I love the ideas. Like, so we haven't talked about the voiceover, but Aaron is providing this voiceover that we realize by the end of the movie is a phone call to himself, kind of explaining to himself everything that's going down, which is just crazy on its own. But like, it's like once the idea was presented, we couldn't not look at it. And that's when Abe wakes up in the middle of the night because the kids are hitting cars and making the car alarms go off, and then gets the idea to go punch this guy in the face and then go back in time and stop the kids from hitting the cars, which would stop himself from waking up, which would stop himself from having the idea to go back. And that's how they would fix the time loop.
But that's confusing because then there'd still be two of them, wouldn't there?
Well, in theory, he would go back in the morning, right? But yeah, I mean, yes, there would be.
There's some stuff about the movie that I'm just like, I genuinely don't get. Like the idea that, Aaron, like the first time he goes back, he basically kidnaps himself and hides himself in the attic.
Yes.
And then the rest of the movie, there's creepy sounds coming from the attic, which, he says like, don't worry about it, I'll deal with it. And then that self eventually escapes. So like
at the very end of the movie. Yeah.
So clearly, that is a problem. Like if you stop yourself from going into the machine, you don't erase. There is no erasing the thing that you once you have gone back in time. That's it.
The only way to erase yourself, or to prevent there from being two of you, is to allow to allow you to go into the machine at the same time you did. Right? Like, so okay, let's just before we talk about, like, we got to talk about themes and acting and directing and all that stuff. We got to talk about that. It's important, but we got to get this time travel shit down first.
Yeah.
So here's how the movie works. We have Abe. Abe goes back in time on his first day. Let's call it, I don't know what day it is. Let's call it Monday for clarity's sake. On his first day on Monday, he's built two time machines. He's built one that he turns on at 9 o'clock in the morning, and then he's got his fail-safe device that he turns on probably before that, right? And that one he's just leaving on for hours. And so that's like the emergency go back in time to before we did any of this device. So he's got both of those and he's turned them both on. One at let's say 8 a.m., one at 9 a.m. He goes into the 9 a.m. He turns on the 9 a.m. device, hangs out at a hotel all day, goes at 3 p.m., goes in the device, goes back in time to 9 a.m., goes and finds Aaron, introduces Aaron to the concept of time travel, brings Aaron to like right outside the storage container at 3 p.m., watches his version of himself go into the device, therefore disappearing and being removed from the timeline, right? So that's the first day.
Right.
Right? And then at some point, which is actually, they never show it to us, but it's actually really important, Aaron goes to a party without Abe, and there's a guy there with a shotgun, and he stops the guy with the shotgun, which that doesn't mean anything to us at the time, but ends up being like one of the pivotal moments of the story. Because it becomes a thing that Aaron is kind of obsessed with, because he wants to take that guy, not just stop him, but get him arrested so he'll never bother anyone again. Because I guess he assumes that when they find the Mr. Granger that clearly went back in time at some point in the future, it must have something to do with Shotgun ex-boyfriend. I guess.
I don't understand the Mr. Granger thing at all.
I think the only thing that Mr. Granger does, I don't think they ever explain why he's here or how it happened. I think all it does is scare Abe enough to go back to his failsafe.
Okay.
But Aaron has already gone back in the failsafe and brought one of the devices with him back in the failsafe. So now there are two failsafes. So they both go back. They both go all the way back to the beginning, which means there are three Aarons and two Abes. It's basically, that's my math here. That at the end of this movie, there are three Aarons in this device. There's Aaron, we'll call him Attic Aaron. This is gonna be so. I don't know if this is good audio or not. We have Attic Aaron, who's stuck in the attic throughout the entire movie. We have we have the Aaron that drugs Attic Aaron. So we'll call him Drug Aaron.
Okay.
And then we have the final Aaron that goes back and confronts Drug Aaron right after he's drugged Attic Aaron. And they fight. And then Drug Aaron goes off. And then Aaron 6 is the one that then goes to the party, that then has the recording, goes to the party, does all that stuff.
Okay. Now, I don't mean to break your flow, but this is something that I don't know if I'm confused or misunderstood or what, but I thought that we were supposed to think like, oh, he was just a big hero and he stopped the guy with the shotgun, and then I was like, no, I think actually that was also time travel. Like the reason why he was there at the party to stop the guy with the shotgun was because he had time traveled to do that.
Correct.
Okay.
And actually, one of the things you'll notice in the movie, this is really clever. Shankaruth is so clever. When we don't see the party until the very end of the movie, but the party is presented to us about halfway through, where Abe is like told, "Did you hear what Aaron did at the party last night?" And he's like, "No, Aaron explained it to me." And the Aaron that's there can't explain it because he wasn't actually there, and he was just told about it through the phone call.
Okay.
That's coming from the other guy.
Okay, I think you're right. I didn't get that, but that has to be the case because the actual scene where we see the party scene is toward the end when we're basically following these guys who have agreed to do this, but they're several iterations down the line.
Right, and the confusing thing is the reason why the ex-boyfriend is at the party is because Aaron invited him to the party specifically, because he sees the other dude, and that's when they're at the basketball court. And he invites him and says, yeah, bring your friend, who they know is Rachel, the boyfriend of Abe's ex-boyfriend. And so that was all orchestrated too. And we don't know why, but that's like one of those, it's like a loop there. Like the reason they have to do this, they have to make sure he gets to the party because we want him there. That's what's not clear with me.
Yeah.
But I am pretty certain that by the end of the movie, there are 3 Aarons, there are 2 Abes. Both of the Aarons leave. One of them just fucks off to I don't know where. One of the Aarons is seen in the very end of the movie building like the warehouse-sized time machine, which is ominous. Very extremely ominous. And Abe stays in town to try to prevent the double of him that's there from ever doing this in the first place. I don't even know what that would do. It wouldn't make him go away. It wouldn't make either of them go away.
I think all he does is he spares himself from this hell that he's created.
Yeah.
And then maybe
he feels responsible for it.
Maybe and then, who knows what he actually does with himself. Maybe he doesn't have a family to abandon. So maybe he just goes off and lives his life. Like, I don't know.
But he did drug himself and throw himself in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Or he didn't drug himself. He put a mask over himself.
Did Abe? Yeah, I don't remember. Did Abe just poison his breakfast? Which one of them drugged their breakfast?
Aaron poisoned his double's breakfast.
Okay, I remember. Yeah,
Abe is the one. It's this really wonderful shot where you just see the guy sleeping and slowly a gas mask is put over his face, or an oxygen mask is put over his face, and that's how he knocks his double out.
Yeah,
and puts him.
I want to see. I want to watch a cut of the movie where at the bottom of the screen it just says all right, this is the point when this is no longer, or even just a little notation of in this scene this is Aaron 3,
right?
Because there's parts where I could believe that this is the original Aaron, he's acting as if this is all shocking to him. I could even believe that he genuinely does have the earpiece in because it's March Madness. And then later he takes advantage of that to feed himself the script. At a certain point, we're no longer seeing original Aaron, obviously, but I don't know what point that is. And there are very tiny hints, when we see them doing the stock manipulation, you see him writing the letters in this incredibly slow and precise way, and that's well before you learn anything about what that means.
Yeah.
You only notice
which is that their handwriting deteriorates the more they time travel.
Yes, and so that already has to be an Aaron who's been time traveling more than the Abe who is in that, who's supposedly in step with him.
Right. We also see his ear bleed. Before, and and that I think is also a clue that this guy's been doing it more than you. That his ear bleeds on like the second time, where we haven't seen Abe's ear bleed at all. Yeah. There's all kinds of, like, the one thing that really fascinated me is they do the very first test, right? They do the very first test with it stable, and then it cuts to Abe waking up on the floor of his room, like disoriented and confused. And that, I think it turns out, is him waking up from being gassed. But we didn't know that at the time. It's just this really weird, like off-putting cut. Where you're like, why is he, like, he seems confused, and he's like, he didn't just wake up from a nap. Like, what is going on here? We're very, like, there's these moments where Carruth cuts to the start of a scene, and it's not like a smooth transition. It's a disorienting, confused transition. And I think, like, we see those even before we understand why they're there.
Yeah, there's a lot of cleverness like that. Cleverness that sort of borders on ambiguity, where, like, at one point it shows Aaron, like, lying in bed unable to sleep, and it's like 6 a.m. and you're, I think at first you're like, oh yeah, he's super nervous and amped about this discovery that they made. And then you have to consider, like, well, maybe he just can't sleep because he's got, like, the most horrible jet lag imaginable. And this is like noon for him, basically.
Yeah. I mean, like, because the process of time travel in this story is not instantaneous, right? You have to exist in one space for the exact amount of time you're going back, which I think is brilliant and horrifying. Like, if you want to go back 6 hours into the past, you have to wait. You have to lay in a box for 6 hours. So when they go back like 4 days, they're like basically putting themselves into hibernation to survive 4 days in the box.
Yeah. Which, I mean, the warehouse that he's building at the end, I now think, maybe this was supposed to be obvious. Maybe this is a wild idea that I've just came up with, but I thought he was basically building a living space inside the machine so that he can just, like, turn it on and, like, live comfortably inside the machine, go about his day and do things, and not have to be, like, cramped up into a little ball. And that would allow him to go back, like, arbitrary lengths of time, like days and days potentially.
Yeah. I think so. I mean, I can't think of another, like, what other reason would there be besides comfort? Because, like, what would you want to bring back that's warehouse sized?
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
But yeah, if you could just, like, I mean, the cool thing about it is you can't just go back arbitrarily, like, 3 years into the past, right? Yeah. You can only go back towards the point where you turned the machine on originally. Which is really, I mean, it's really cool. Like, I like that a lot. That's a really cool idea. And there's, like, there's so many little beats, like when Abe and Aaron travel back the first time together, and Abe is like, I woke up before my alarm went off, and I wanted to get out, but I trusted the math, I trusted the science, and then, like, he's out before the other guy. So it's like, no, you're lying. Like, they're just lying to each other constantly. And that's what I think adds on the confusion, is because you're seeing this stuff play out. And I don't think, like, the story, like, specifically, like, telegraphs the lies often. It just, like, lets them lay there. Like, the movie is, I think, designed to be watched more than once. Like, I think when Carruth was writing this movie, he's like, I really want people to watch this multiple times to be able to understand it, and I'm not going to make it easy for them to understand.
Yeah, I think that conversation can segue into talking about the friendship, which is something I really wanted to talk about.
Yeah, let's do it.
Because, like, I really love what he's doing with this in this movie, because it's not like he made them like, oh, they're not really friends. It's not like, oh, like this is a relationship of convenience and this just revealed how weak their friendship was. Like, I think that they were actually friends. I think that there was a lot of trust and mutual admiration. It's more the fact that, like, even people who like and trust each other, you give them something which is just incredibly disruptive and powerful, and it's a secret that only the two of them share. And then they come to a disagreement about how to use it. And if it's this powerful and they disagree about it, like, the incentive to betray the other person is like incredibly high enough that you can sort of empathize with it. Even like, even if you think, like, well, that was bad. Obviously you shouldn't have betrayed your friend, but, like, you can see yourself in that situation being like, yeah, but, like, what if you just really felt like you needed to do this thing, and your partner, your friend was saying, no, absolutely not. And then you would be like, well, maybe I can do it in a way where they won't ever know about it, and they won't be hurt by it. And then of course it doesn't work out that way, and everything goes to shit rapidly. So I just loved everything about the relationship between these two men.
I did too, and what I like about what you're saying is basically you take two guys that are good friends, and I agree with you. They are good friends. The other two of this four people company, obviously not as good of friends with those. They're uninterested in bringing these guys in. They're kind of annoyed with them. They're like talking shit about them after they leave.
Right.
That is a relationship of convenience, a relationship of business. Aaron and Abe, absolutely not. But they are different. And what I like about what Carruth does with the movie is we spend a lot of time in this movie. This is a short movie. It's 77 minutes long. It's very short.
Yeah.
But we spend really a good 15 minutes just focusing on them working towards a solution that ends up not being the thing that they build, right? Like, and I think that what that is doing is defining their relationship and showing how they work together. And what it does is it takes kind of in like a time travel-y way where it takes like minute differences in their personalities, which at first normally just results in like minor disagreements and squabbles and like just behaving differently, like when they're moving the fridge and he's about to and Aaron's about to like just cut the copper wire out of the fridge and take the Freon, and like he's just reckless and he's just gonna do it. It's just like, we have a fridge here, it has copper tubing, it has Freon, I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
And then Aaron's like, wait a minute, you're not going to save any money doing that. Like, I'll just buy it. That is their relationship defined, is one is just jumping and going to do it, and the other's like, hold on, no, wait. But in normal operations, it's just that kind of disagreement. And then you introduce this element into it, and it compounds and makes that minute difference exponentially worse until we get the result of this movie. And I think like exponential problem is just a thing that happens in time travel. I think like as you make like like it's the whole rock in a pond thing, right? Like a small change can ripple out into a big problem. And that is their relationship. The small difference in their personalities ripples out into this big problem where by the end of the movie, their friendship is basically irreparably damaged.
Yeah.
Or at least two versions of them, friendship are irreparably damaged.
Yeah, right. Like the movie does get like geometrically more confusing as it goes, almost as if it were written by a mathematician who did that on purpose.
Yes.
And I think that is intentional, like because he could very easily just have them have more conversations where they're like, okay, this is what happened, and then you did this, and then like, but he wants you to be, I think, in the headspace that these characters are, where they're like, who's that guy? Where'd that get? What? Why is he following us? Is this another time traveler? Like, how did there's a guy in the attic. Like it's like a normal, interesting movie about guys trying to build a business in their garage for 20 minutes or something, and then it's a fun and exciting, like, oh, the possibilities of time travel, that's interesting for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, this is getting a little strange. We're now time traveling, and it's not quite what we expected it would be, and now there's like slightly weird things happening, and then like the next 20 minutes are just absolute chaos. I may be exaggerating, kind of rushing through, but like it is fun how the movie has this sequence where it really does draw you in, and it feels very grounded at first, and then by the end you walk away from it and you're like, I kind of have no idea what happened in that movie.
Right. Yeah, and it's only really the last 20 minutes that you really start feeling that. Like, I remember this is a really complicated movie, and that was my reaction going through it. Like, it's 45 minutes into the movie, you're like, this isn't that bad so far. I mean, I get this. They're doing this. And then it's like, oh, wait, we turned another corner.
Yeah.
And shit got real.
And then you begin to wonder if you were wrong about what you thought was happening. Like, like even this is at least the second time I've seen this, maybe the third, and still... When I watched the first time when Abe comes up to Aaron sitting on the park bench with the earphone in, I'm like, I still don't know if that was Aaron 2 or original Aaron, because he's like acting too perfectly, but that could just be that he's a good actor. I don't know. Like
right. Well, it's like it depends on how time travel works in this universe, right? Because if it's consistent, then it couldn't possibly be original Aaron, because original Aaron was always in the attic, right? Or was he? I don't know.
I don't know. That's a good point, actually. I unfortunately we can't have dead air while I think this through. But I think you're right, but it's also possible that like we're following Abe. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I almost had it for a second there.
I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I like the movie does not want to help you. Like, you would think this ex-boyfriend confrontation, which almost serves as the climax of the film, would be a thing that the movie would have focused on more earlier, right? Like, seeing it the first time, we would have seen it. But because the characters we're following weren't actually there, Carruth denies us that scene. And I wonder if there's like, if he has notes in there where he's like, as he's writing this movie, what scenes he's allowing us to see and what scenes he's not allowing us to see. Is like he's got this track, and the characters we follow are only the characters that have gone through this certain part, and so we can't see anything any of the other versions of them can. And I think that's true. Mm-hmm. If I think like just broadly, like the characters we follow are for the most part the same ones, quote unquote. Uh-huh. Like we don't see with some, well, there's sometimes we cut, like we see the original Aaron breaking out of the attic, so we do see that, but that's like the very end of the movie.
Like a glimpse too.
Yeah. So I think we stick with these two versions, which end up, we learn, are like version 5 and 6 of them, and not what we thought they were. But
yeah, it's interesting because words like original Aaron sort of like the you could say the Aaron we're following is the original Aaron in the sense that like if you put a sticker on him at the start of the movie, this guy would still have the sticker on him. Right. Like that, but in that sense, they're all original Aaron, so never mind.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Okay. Yeah. I think maybe the only thing where not the only thing where I'm confused, because I'm confused about many things, obviously. But I did wonder if Abe didn't have some like ace up his sleeve that we don't know about. I think that you've convinced me that he doesn't, and that he was indeed completely serious when he was like, "No, look, my sole goal here is to now mess with myself and make sure that I never discover the machine, and then go off and do something else, presumably." Yeah,
you reminded me of the scene where he says, like, "I haven't even really started trying to fight you on this," or something.
I think he says, like, "I've never had any reason to show you what I'm capable of."
Right.
Which you could just take as like, as a human being, you've never pushed me far enough to actually make me become violent. Right. Or it could mean I have another backup machine, and if I wanted to, I could go back a day before even you have ever gone back and really mess everything up for you.
Yeah. That was my take when I originally heard it. But yeah, I mean, I would like there to be like a special Abe thing, because I feel like the poor guy gets a raw deal out of all this. Like Aaron just kind of charges forward and takes advantage of him at every corner.
Yeah.
So I would like Abe to have like a secret plan, but I don't think so.
Yeah. Because I mean, if he did, I feel like he might have just used it. Like if he had an extra, because tell me if this is wrong. Like I feel like everything I'm saying ends up being wrong, but like if let's say he had a second failsafe machine that went back like another day, and at the end of the movie he decides, like, you know what, Aaron has betrayed me. I want to prevent any of this from ever happening. He goes back a day before any of the other stuff in the movie, and then he goes into the other room and he tears apart and destroys the other 2 time machines. That does stop everything else from happening. Like that does change. Like that cuts off the ability of those other Aarons who ever exist in the first place, right?
Yeah, but aren't there are Aarons in those boxes? Would he kill him?
There's only Aarons in those boxes if he turned them on already.
True.
I'm saying do it. I'm saying he has a backup machine that goes back I mean, we could even say he goes back to before he even built those other boxes. He just has this double backup machine, and then he just stops himself from building the next he stops himself from building the backup boxes that we saw in this movie. This is all hypothetical. I'm just saying
Sure.
you can truncate somebody else's time loop if you just go back before they started the time loop.
True.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, and it was his original plan, and the only reason that plan didn't work was because he didn't realize that Aaron already knew that he had that box
The
and had
failsafe,
already
yeah.
used it. And not only had Aaron used it, he took another one in it with him,
right.
which is actually brilliant. To just be like, why don't I just take a box with me in this box?
Yeah.
And then I'll have two boxes. And then
Right.
I can return on his failsafe box, but then also turn on my failsafe box in case he fucks with my shit.
Right. It's funny because for a second I was like, wait, did he turn on the failsafe box and then get into the time machine? Or no, like, did he fold it up but then turn it on and then get into the time machine so that he has no, that doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think we did it. We figured out the time travel stuff. It's
think we
easy.
did.
It's not even that complicated, guys.
It's not. It's easy. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure Shane Carruth has this all detailed out. Like, I feel like he's the kind of guy who would have had this all written down in detail, including like the reason why certain things, like the deterioration rate of how long it takes you for your ear to start bleeding and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, I bet he knows why Mr. Granger time traveled.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's an answer. I was thinking about that. I was considering posing the question to you, what possibly happened that Mr. Granger ended up in one of these boxes? And I don't know.
Like, yeah, like one of them must have like, yeah, I think that's, maybe that's the fun thing is we can guess at it all day, right? We can come up with all kinds of stories about like what must have happened to result in this. But the thing is, we'll never know. And that's exactly the same situation that the characters are in.
Sure.
And that's what's fun about it is
Right.
that they're like, I think maybe the movie even says something like that. Like they're discussing like, how did this happen? Like, did you tell them about it? Or, and neither of them know, neither of them can figure it out. And it's, you know, it's crazy making. It's just like everything else. It's like, okay, this is out of hand. This is, you know, the paranoia increases. Like they start, I think that's one of the many things that makes them start suspecting that the other is trying to screw them over, even though they aren't necessarily yet trying to screw them over, but like weird things happen and it makes them suspicious of each other. And then at a certain point they are trying to screw each other over, but it's like driven by the feeling that the other one is trying to screw them over.
Right.
Which is fun.
The paranoia just extrapolates there. Yeah, it is fun. It's a lot of fun. And like, to kind of get back to the movie and less about I think, you know, the way Carruth writes dialogue is so interesting to me because it doesn't sound like movie dialogue, right? There's a lot of talking over each other that happens here. Like when there are four people in a room, they're all having separate conversations and it just kind of like washes over you in that kind of way. It feels very naturalistic to me.
Absolutely. The dialogue, what the camera is doing is really fascinating to me. And I would love to watch this movie like again and just pay attention to the camera because, I mean, first of all, it's very cool and unique. And I think that I would think it was cool and unique even if I didn't know that it was done on a shoestring budget. Knowing that it was done on a shoestring budget, it becomes obvious that some of these choices were made because it's like, look, we can't do what we might want to do in this situation if we had a big budget. So like we're going to have this, you know, grainy, low quality nighttime shot, which comes out looking really well because they kind of lean into that. They lean into the low budgetness of it in a way that I just think absolutely works.
I think this entire film was shot on 16 millimeter film, which is why it's very grainy.
Yeah.
And I know like film's expensive, and this movie costs like $7,000. Like $7,000 is a lot of money. I don't want to minimize that, but like movie making is super expensive.
Right.
Like to make a movie on $7,000 is insane. It is absolutely insane. And they basically, what I read about this movie is the shooting ratio is basically 2-1, where normally like you shoot a movie and like it would probably be like 10-1, which is the film you shot versus what's in the final picture, right? Like you shoot a lot and then you pick your takes and then you throw some stuff out. And it's usually, that ratio is usually way higher. 2-1 means that they used half of all the film they shot. And it's just because they didn't have a lot of film and they had to make sure that they couldn't just waste takes. They couldn't, like they had to be meticulous. And apparently this whole thing was heavily storyboarded. Carruth knew everything. He knew every camera movement, every blocking, like it was all storyboarded out before he even brought out the camera. And that's what happens when you're trying to make a $7,000 movie.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Right. Yeah. I just love the atmosphere that he manages to achieve with it, because like I'm thinking in my mind right now specifically about the scene where it's like his wife is like doing laundry and Aaron and Abe are like having beers and talking about what they would do with $1 billion, which the wife doesn't realize is a serious conversation.
Right.
But like the sort of extreme minimalism and just like sort of out of focusness, and like the wife character just like walking through the frame and like slightly out of focusness. It just, I don't know. I just loved it. Like I'm like, even if I had a big budget, I might want to use this exact style for this type of conversation to kind of capture the intimacy and, you know, the like the muzzy feeling of having had a couple beers.
Yeah.
Like the nice kind of warm lighting, which like they don't have a giant lighting rig and professionals to like tune it all in. It's just,
no, I think they use fluorescence,
but it still looks great to me.
Yeah. Well, I think they made it look warm, right? Like I'm trying to think of the phrase. Like it's just how you how you develop the film. You can overexpose. I think it's overexposing it makes it a little bit warmer because it allows more light in, and it makes it a little less harsh, and like it's brighter and warmer. I think I'm saying the right words. I'm not an expert of this, but I think that's what he did, and I think you're right. It gets this really intimate type of conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a bunch like that. Like I like the scene when they're looking around for like some pet outside, and it's like there's this fountain area that they're in, and like you can sort of only half hear them because of the fountain, and it's dark, the lighting is poor, but like everything about it just works. You're not thinking like, oh, this is obviously made cheaply. You're thinking like, oh, how stylistic.
Yeah, and I like we talked last week in Super Mario Brothers how many lines were ADR'd in that film, which was a whole lot. And I'm pretty sure a lot of the lines in this movie were ADR'd, just because you can't shoot outside without like a super ridiculously professional microphone and not just have it be a mess.
Right.
And there are moments like I think maybe the fountain shot was on set dialogue. But there are other moments where they're standing outside, like near a street, and just experience recording near a street. It's a disaster. And there's no way you could, like, the lines will be lost in the background noise. So I think they ADR'd a lot of the dialogue in this movie, which for low budget films, that's actually really common because like sound is one of the hardest things to get right on a low budget film. You can always, if you want, like look at a bunch of short films, you can always tell the ones that barely had any budget because they just don't sound as good. The sound effects just aren't as good. And they're usually not mixed as well. And I think a lot of this dialogue ended up being ADR'd, but I do think he did a good job with it. Like it didn't stick out to me like it did in Super Mario Brothers, which is $1 million production.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's certain very small moments where there's almost an uncanny valley feeling where it's, and it's not even like their mouth doesn't line up. It's like, it's almost like I'm like, I don't think that I think it's like the breathing didn't line up almost.
Well, it's like it's just you're in a studio.
Yeah.
Like it's just like there's a difference between talking in a kitchen, so, like and the way that sounds versus you're in a studio. And even if you like mix in background noises, like it's just hard to nail perfectly if you don't have the money to do it.
Yeah.
And so it's not perfect.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
Or stuff like, I mean, as I like move around in my seat, my diaphragm changes shape, and my like resonating cavity of my larynx changes shape and stuff. And like you can't, I mean, it's very difficult to match that. All this to say, perfect ADR is maybe unattainable. This was absolutely great. I mean, it seems like this Shane Carruth character is a bit of a perfectionist because it came out remarkably well.
It did. I want to talk about one of my favorite shots in the movie that like they did a special effect without having to have money to do a special effect, because the one big special effect in this movie, Matt, is when Abe takes the hole punch dots and puts them on top of the electromagnet, and they like slowly, they don't just fall, right? They like slow, like they're almost hovering, and they slowly so he's got this rig set up, and he's got the camera, and the camera is on the two of them standing over it, and then as Abe is about to drop the dots, the camera slides to the right. And instead of seeing the effect happen, we see the effect happen through the viewing screen on his digital camcorder. So basically, all that does is give you permission to turn down the quality, because we're not seeing it just like live. We're seeing it through a window on a camcorder, and so it's grainy, and you can't really tell what's going on. And so it's still a computer effect, but they hid the fact that they couldn't pay for a really expensive computer effect by shooting it through the viewfinder of another camera. And it's just like, that's so clever. That's like one of those things, like, they were sitting there deciding, how can we do this shot? We got to get the scene. We have to be able to see like the magnet slow down the hole punch pieces. Like, we have to do that. How can we do it? I designed this visual effect and it just doesn't look right. It just doesn't look right. It's like, well, we can hide it. Let's do it this way. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things that I think low budget filmmaking sometimes just really brings out the brilliance in people by forcing them to solve problems that other people would solve with money.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because like I like a lot of I mean, okay, so like they didn't really have CGI when we were kids. Like not really. And there's so many movies from that era that I'll watch now, and I'll be like, oh, like I now understand that the reason why this cut happens this way, and the reason why this is shot this way, the reason XYZ is that there is no way to actually do this thing that they're giving you the impression has happened by cleverly like implying it happened, sort of between the frames, if you will. And nowadays they would just have the camera like stand back and watch that whole thing happen.
Sure.
And I'm not sure if it's an improvement, honestly. Like I think it's totally fine to not go for the spectacle. You know what I mean? Like again, I really love this aesthetic for one thing, like this low budget aesthetic that he kind of turned into the skid and made it work for him. And I think like if I had the budget to make a big budget movie, I would prefer to do like clever things like that rather than show a big flashy special effect, just like aesthetically. I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but there's something about it that I really like.
Well, yeah, I mean, like everything, all the design of this movie is predicated on the budget, right? Like what the box looks like, how it works.
Yeah.
There's no flashy like special effect. There's no like button switch. Like the most it does when it's just in the little tiny format is like shake. So it's like someone's under the table, probably just moving it. There's nothing there. It's just like kind of boring science. Right. Like it's the way, like with all these time travel movies have these like the freaking DeLorean is like the most extravagant time travel device ever, and this is just a box, and you turn it on and it hums.
Yeah.
And then it does its thing, and then you get out of it, and you're back in time.
You could literally make the box with stuff you bought at Home Depot for like $40.
Right. And I feel like if there were to be a time travel device in our world, it would be more the box than it would be the DeLorean.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Or like, you know, if in a movie, in any other movie, in a big budget movie, it would have like electricity sparking off of it in long blue coils, and you know, when he got out of the box, he wouldn't just be like, ah, God, that hurt. He would be like, you know, thrashing with a surge of electricity, and then his eyes would glow briefly, and it's like, no, like don't. This is fantastic. I love it this way.
I do too.
You know, I think the sound deserves a huge amount of credit. So like, just the sound of the boxes. I love the eeriness of the box sound, especially
that hum. You mean
the hum? Yeah, like at the beginning when they're powering it up, and then he removes the power, and you just hear it like coasting. Mm-hmm. It's such a subtly uncomfortable mechanical sound. I don't know how he did it exactly, but it's great.
Yeah, and considering like he did all of it,
yeah.
I don't like, where do you get that sound from? I don't know. I don't know. It's really cool.
Yeah.
So Matt, why primer?
I mean, I think that's what the phone call is. I think the phone call is a primer or a primer on like, look, this is what's going to happen. It's preparing him, and that's what that word means. Mm-hmm. I can't think of any other explanation for the title, frankly.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's what I thought it was too. So, great. So. I'm trying to think of what else I have to talk about this movie. Shane Carruth, like as a director, is this fascinating person. I don't know if you've ever seen his other movie, which is his only other movie that he's made.
I have not.
I think that's a movie worth talking about at some point. It is very different from this movie, but very, very Shane Carruth in that it's weird, it's confusing. I think it's wonderful, and it has a lot to do with music and sound, which I don't think will surprise you after this movie. But
cool,
yeah, that's all he's done, right? He did this movie in 2004. 9 years later, he made Upstream Color, another movie that was pretty well received. And he's acted in and appeared in some other movies. He's composed some music for a TV show, but that's it. And I think he said he's done. I think he said he's retired from filmmaking. It's fascinating.
Yeah, I think maybe he just like, this is what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
He doesn't really, maybe, I mean, it's entirely possible that he doesn't enjoy it that much. like I can imagine him just being like, God, this is such a headache. Like, I mean, being creative is definitely hard, right? Like it's not like fun. It's like, you're just like, oh, this is just a blast. Like, especially, you know, the Wikipedia article says that it took him 2 years to do the post-production, and he almost gave up on it, just because it was a drag, basically.
Oh, really?
Like two years of, I mean, I think we all have like projects that just kind of sit on the shelf, and maybe you poke at them a bit and get despondent and frustrated that it's not working the way you want, and you put it back, and then you come back to it, and like, maybe that's what this was to him. Like maybe this almost didn't make it, you know, maybe this is almost one of those things that, you know, in some alternate time travel induced timeline, Shane Carruth just kind of every once in a while in 2020, like shakes his head and looks over at like this box under his bed, which contains the you know, working cut of his, film primer that he never actually finished.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I think you're right. I didn't know. Like, I knew it took him 2 years. I didn't know that he almost gave up. God, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Think of the multiverse. Think of the multiverse.
I know.
Right.
Think of what other things haven't been made that should have been, Scott.
Oh my God! Don't do that to me. Don't do that. I can't. My head. All right. So I think we're pretty positive on this movie, and I think it's safe to say we're both going to vote yes on this. Here's what I want to ask you, though. We haven't put rules over this canon thing, right?
Uh-huh.
We haven't, and I don't want to put too many rules on it, but I do want to ask the question: if there's only going to be one time travel movie in the Doof canon, would you want it to be Primer?
Well, that's tough.
It's a hard question, right? It is.
I mean, like, yeah, you might have to slice it thinner because like stuff like Back to the Future is such a it's almost like Ghostbusters or something where it's like, well, nothing can match this. If only in terms of nostalgia, nothing can ever be as good as Back to the Future. But that's like a comedy Back to the Future movie,
Sure.
a comedy time travel movie.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't think these are the same. These aren't trying to do the same thing, you know. These aren't trying to do the same thing. If we're talking about serious time travel movies, then I think probably I'm not. Maybe I'm failing to think of some obvious other time travel movie that I would say.
Would you call the Terminator movies time travel movies? I mean, they are.
But they're really action movies.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is nothing is really trying to do what this movie is doing.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly think Looper, as much as it doesn't want to talk about time travel shit, is a movie that's dealing with time travel.
Yeah.
Not as much as this one, but close.
I think I like this movie more than Looper though.
It's been a while since I've seen Looper.
Yeah.
I think I like them a lot. I mean, like, if you made me choose, like, only one can get into this thing, Primer or Looper, that would be a tough decision for me.
Yeah.
But I mean, this movie's fresh on my mind, so I'm like, yeah, Primer, 100%. But I really liked Looper. I really did.
Yeah, I did too. I think it worked really well. I think that this movie gets a lot of points from me for being made by someone with a very engineering mindset, just because there are so few movies that are that. I mean, there are probably plenty of movies that were, you know, a book was written by an engineer and then that was a science fiction book that was turned into a movie, but like not very many where like one man who is a science engineer guy did everything, and you can really see the fingerprints of that all over this movie, and that I like that a lot. I kind of wish there were more things like that, and this gets a lot of points for me because of that.
Yeah, and I think like the first thing that goes into our canon being a independent film, low budget movie, not a big huge blockbuster spectacle type thing. I like that too. I like the idea of that happening, and not that Looper is it was certainly a bigger blockbuster movie than this.
Yeah.
Had freaking Bruce Willis in it. But
Right.
I like the idea of that kind of setting the tone for what this is going to be. So I'm with you on this. I think I vote yes on this.
Yeah, good. Of course, our votes are meaningless, but
They are.
It's good to know that we have a consensus about this. Yeah, I think that I it's funny because the rules of what goes in the collection are sort of up to be determined by the voting body and through discussion. And
right.
I know back when we did Kryptonian collection, there was at least one movie that we did not accept into the collection.
Yeah.
Maybe more than one.
Your poor brother.
Yeah. I think Daniel was the only one who brought. I think he was. I don't remember what movie it was now.
It was Red Belt, the Mammoth movie.
Well, I voted for Red Belt, but
I did not. I did not like that movie.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Mammoth's cool. If I had to pick a Mammoth movie, it would not be Red Belt.
I think that's fair, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I'm actually more excited about this because we've given our opinions, but we can only give our opinions. Now, dear listener, it's up to you. It's up to you if you agree. Is this movie good enough? Is this movie unique enough? Is this and you guys get to decide. Do you want the rules to be there can only be one time travel movie, or there can only be one blah 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 movie?
There can only be one Shane Carruth movie.
Yeah. See, I don't even know. If you tell me that's the rules, I'm hesitant here, and I'm like, well, I really, really like Upstream Color, like a whole lot. So I don't even know if I don't know. But it's not up to me. Thank God. It's not up to me. It's up to you guys. So once again, it's time to vote now. Go vote. The link will be in the description. I haven't decided where that poll is going to be, Matt. I think we can make a public poll on our Patreon that doesn't require you to be a patron. So I think that's where it's going to be. So it'll be a link in the show notes. It'll take you to a poll. Select yes to let it in, or disagree with Matt and I and say, no, it does not deserve to be in the canon, and maybe chat about it. Chat about it in the comments. Chat about it if you're a member of our Patreon, chat about it in the Discord. We want you guys to own this. I want this list to be a picture of our community, right? Like, this is what our community has collectively agreed on is the canon of the best stories. And I'm not saying films, because we're not limiting to just films. It could be short stories. It could be other things, as long as they're relatively short. So own this and decide amongst yourselves, and democracy, kind of.
Yes, absolutely.
You said that like ominously. Like, I'm worried if you're going to like go back in time and fuck with something or something.
Hold on, let me my earpiece says that's a good one, Scott.
We didn't talk about the moment where in his earpiece he makes the basketball shot, and in live he doesn't, and the characters give this look of, does that mean something?
Yeah. Oh shit.
What does that mean?
We got to recover this. They just try to like pull it all back on track.
Yeah. It's great. Well, that's Primer. Vote, and we will announce the winner. Well, not the winner. We will announce if the movie has won and is into the canon at the very beginning of next week's show. We're doing this once a month, so if you are at the Doof Warrior level or above, make sure you are checking your Patreon or checking the Discord to see when it's time to start nominating your choices again and voting together on what the council is going to nominate for us next month. So just make sure you're doing that. And to everyone else, vote. Please vote. I think this is going to be more fun the more people participate.
Yeah. I can't wait to move on with more of this show.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what this list looks like a year from now. What 12 items on this list look like a year from now. I think
Totally.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
All right, guys, that's all we had for you this week. If you have any opinions on this movie, let us know. Vote. Definitely do that vote. But also, if you want to reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com, or over on Twitter at doofmedia. And here's a question I'm going to pose for you, not related to anything we just talked about, but we're all self-quarantining right now. What are you watching to get yourself through the self-quarantine? Let us know. I want to know what you guys are entertaining yourselves with while you're sitting in your house, unable to leave. So reach out to us at doofmedia@gmail.com or over on our Twitter account at doofmedia.
Yeah. And if you're not already subscribed to this podcast, we encourage you to do so and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
And you can find this and all of our shows over at our website, doofmedia.com. That's where you will find Do the Right Thing. If we have any writers that are listening to this podcast and do not know what Do the Right Thing is, you should check that out. It's a writing prompt podcast where they give you 3 or 4 words every week, and all you have to do is write for half an hour using 3 of those 4 words, and that's it. It's easy.
Yeah,
that's why I've never done it.
It's reddit.com/r/do the right thing. That is with a WRITE.
Yeah, like writing.
Yep.
It's a lot of fun. The hosts, Matthias and Jarvis, write their own stories, read their own stories, and they talk about some viewer stories. So check that show out if you're a writer. I think it's a great way to force you into the habit, it's a habit I need to be forced into myself.
Yeah, I've definitely done it a lot. I've sort of fallen off the wagon recently, but I've done many over time, and I enjoy it a lot. So.
Yeah. And of course, if you like what we do here and want to support us, consider becoming a patron of Doof Media. We are a fully Patreon-funded organization. All the money that keeps us afloat and keeps the light on comes from donations from our listeners. So if you can help us out, you can pledge $1 a month. You can pledge $5 a month. You can be like the people that voted for Primer to be this week's council movie, who pledge at the $20 level. Anything you could afford it's just amazing. Thank you guys so much that produced to us. Thank you, Doof Warriors and above, for bringing Primer to us. It's great to revisit this movie.
Yeah, we really do appreciate that. And of course, consider, please, rating and reviewing this podcast on Apple Podcasts, because every review on that website or app or what have you really does help us to get more exposure and helps other people find the content that we're creating here.
All right. We'll see you all next week when I'm opening the thing because I can't remember. We are talking about season 1 of the television show Steven Universe. I've watched 10 episodes of that already, Matt, and I think it's going to be a fun little conversation we're going to have over that show. So join us next week to talk about Steven Universe.
Sounds good.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.